Hey book lovers, I'm Elise and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about the books that I read in December and do a little bit of a wrap up of my reading in 2022. For my stats, I use Storygraph. I really like the visuals that they put together. Here is a little run through of all the books that I read in the year of 2022. Lots of good ones, lots of not so good ones. I did have a reading goal of 100 books for last year and I did reach that goal. Actually, it's kind of funny but not so funny that once I hit 100 books, which I hit, when did I hit that? Like December 21st or 22nd, I think it was. And then I didn't finish any more books for the year. I'm just like, you know what? I hit my goal, I'm good. Fun fact, the first book that I read last year was Outlawed by Anna North, and the last book that I read last year is The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova. You guys, have you ever heard me say, I love romance? I love reading romance novels. I love. No. So then tell me, why was romance my #1 read genre for last year? I don't know why. I don't know why. In fact, wasn't like my top three books of last year were all romance. Oh. Nothing wrong with the romance genre. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying I don't love romance. So I don't understand. I thought I read a lot of thrillers last year. Top 5 genres last year were romance, thriller, contemporary, that's a boring genre, horror, and fantasy. I'm pleased about fantasy. If you've watched my January TBR, then you will have seen that one of my reading goals for the new year is to read more sci-fi, fantasy, and historical fiction. And I do, of course, still plan on reading thrillers. I love horror. I don't want romance to be my #1 read genre. I just don't. The longest book that I read last year was It by Stephen King, coming in at 1,184 pages. And the shortest book, I read that Forward series. They're like science fiction novellas. One of the novellas that I read for that was Randomized by Andy Weir, and that was the shortest book that I read at 27 pages. My most read authors are Stephen King, Ashley Winstead, and Alice Feeney, all sitting at 3 books. My average rating last year, 3.76. So that's not too bad. A little better than average, I'd say. The most ratings that I gave out last year was 4 stars and no 1 stars. I think that's probably because the books that I would have rated 1 star, I ended up DNFing. Or it could also be I feel like I was really lenient with my ratings last year. I was strict with my 5-star ratings, and I will continue to do that in the new year. But I feel like there's a lot of 3.5 stars that probably should have been 2.5. The highest rated book that I read last year across everyone that rated it was the book that I said is my #1 read last year, A Court of Mist and Fury. In the month of December, I read 7 books. The moods were mostly emotional, mysterious, lighthearted, and adventurous. Romance was my #1 genre. And average rating for the month, 3.71. The books that I said I was going to read and didn't. To be fair, I did actually DNF a few books this month. So actually, let's talk about my DNFs first. All right, so the first book that I DNF'd was You're a Mean One, Matthew Prince by Timothy Janofsky. I wasn't really into this one. I did end up finding out that this book was book 2 in a series. And I know a lot of romance books that do that. They're not necessarily books that you have to read in order. I don't know what happened in the first book, but You're a Mean One, Matthew Prince kind of starts out where Matthew, he's done something like off screen. We haven't seen that happen. You just come into the book knowing, and what did he do? He like spent millions and millions of his parents' money on an island or something like that. And so he's carted off to live with his grandparents for a month or so as punishment. His grandparents, they are boarding this guy. I don't really remember the circumstance. I don't know if he needed room and board. I honestly don't remember. But he's the love interest. And he's kind of like a more down to earth, rough and tough kind of guy. Where Matthew, he's definitely more materialistic, very David from Schitt's Creek was the impression that I got. I guess I kind of wish that we would have seen the drama of him like buying the island. Like even if it was just one chapter to kick it off, I would have liked to see that. Again, For all I know, this was in the first book of the series. Try not to hold that against the book too much, but I think the other thing was it was just a vibe thing. It didn't grab my attention. Like, I listened to it for about an hour, I want to say, and I wasn't interested. I didn't care what happened. I'm like, these two end up together, that's great, but I don't really care how it happens. The next book that I DNF, I actually have a couple books on this list that are a little controversial. A book I was buddy reading with Victor, also known as Book Pop, over on Instagram, and that book was The Thursday Murder Club. I don't know if it's me. I don't know what it was. I read over 100 pages and I was so bored and I didn't care and I just wanted it to end. So I ended it and I sold that one and the second one on Pango. It is off my shelf and out of my house, and that's that. The next book that I DNF'd was I just didn't like it. I got more than 50% of the way through this book. Y'all had me expecting good things out of this one. I've talked to a couple people since DNFing this because they're like, oh, I agree, I didn't like it. It wasn't that great, whatever. But before that, literally, like, I hadn't heard anybody say a bad thing about this book. And then I read it and, well, yeah. I just didn't care. I'm not saying this is a bad book. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying for me personally, I did not care. The farting man, seriously? Like, I've never been so disgusted with a character in my life. Like, gross. And I read long enough to, have one of the twists happen. And I'm like, well, duh. Of course, yes. Welcome to the party. I'm so glad that you're in the know now. I don't want to know things before the characters know things. I don't want to be some omniscient observer. I want to be in the hot seat with the main characters. I want to be surprised just like they are. Ouch. I think that was the book saying enough. You've said your piece, put me down. All right, now as far as books that I said I would read and didn't. Across Country Christmas by Courtney Walsh, I did not read. I did start reading it, so I guess technically that's a DNF, but it was an unintentional DNF. I had this on my Kindle from Kindle Unlimited, and I started reading it, and I just never picked it back up. Like, I kind of forgot about it. I'd still like to read it. The Holiday Trap by Roan Parrish. No particular reason why I didn't get to this one. I just didn't. Again, this is one that I would still like to get to either next holiday season or sometime this year if the mood strikes me. Court of Wings and Ruin. I am reading this. Bookmark right there. Probably like 40% would be my guess. So I'm still reading it. I haven't picked it up in a couple weeks. That says nothing about my enjoyment. I just got distracted with other books. Also, can I make an observation? Oh my. Oh. I dinged the page. So, like, any rational person would say this book's longer, right? That's what I thought. It's not. The pages are just, like, the individual pages are just, like, a lot thicker. And then I started ACOWAR, and I was like, oh, this one's not as long. That's kind of a bummer. 699 pages, so it's a little bit longer. But the pages are just, like, so much thinner. I kind of like it, actually. It's not as big, so it's not as hard to hold. Oh, I really need to get back into this. Sorry, that was a bit of a tangent. Another book that I said I would read and didn't, The 12 Dates of Christmas. And I'm pretty sure in my December TBR video, I had said, I haven't read this for the last 2 years. I need to read it. Didn't happen. And you know what? I even bought the audio off Audible because it was on sale one day. And I'm like, great, this will encourage me to read it. And I still didn't read it. Maybe next year. The Family Game by Catherine Steadman. Definitely still want to read it. Just didn't end up getting to it. I'm bummed though because it takes place end of November through December. So it ends on Christmas. December would have been the perfect month to read this, and I didn't. On to the books I did read. Let's start with my 2.5 star read, which was The Santa Suit by Mary Kate Andrews. Not going to go into a lot of detail on this one. I did read this in my holiday romance reading vlog, which I will link down below. The gist of this one was cliche, really happy, really boring. Overall, it had a cute message. It was a fine little holiday read. I wasn't too impressed. All right, going on to the 3-star reads. First is A Merry Little Meet Cute by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. This one I also read in my holiday romance reading vlog, so again, won't go into too much detail. Overall, this one, it was fine. I felt like it held my attention for the most part, but I didn't really care for the romance, basically. This is the one that's an adult film star is accidentally cast to play in just like a regular family-friendly Christmas movie, and her co-star is this former boy band member who she loved growing up, and turns out he's actually a fan of hers as well and the work that she does. There's lots of things that I did like about this book, but overall it was just fine. The other book I rated 3 stars in the month of December is Apple Cider Slang by Julianne Murphy. Nope, by Julianne Lindsay. So this is a cozy mystery, and it was the December pick for the Cozy Hollow Book Club. I'm starting to think that similar to literary, similar to young adults, that cozy mysteries just might not be for me. I think the formula that is cozy mystery is just not something that works for me. For instance, cozy mysteries are really known for, yes, there's a murder, but it's a very clean murder. And I think I like my murders a little dirty. Blood and gore and the things that you would see in a thriller or a horror. Also, too, a lot of cozy mysteries, they have like a romance subplot, and I'm just not a huge romance person. You would never know that based on my #1 read genre from 2022. I think for the most part, I like my books a little bit darker. My 3.5-star read is The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova. This book, I liked it. I don't know that I understood it. I was really kind of lost at the end, but I would still say that I liked it. It's very fantastical. It's also a little bit historical, and there is a villain that's introduced at some point, and that's kind of where I really started to get confused. Despite that, I would still say I enjoyed this book, and I would still recommend people read it. My 4.5-star reads, I did have 2 of them for December. The first one was Midnight in Everwood by M.A. Kuziar. This is a dark nutcracker retelling, and it was beautiful. And actually the beginning of it really reminded me of Pride and Prejudice, because we're with the main character. She's at the dinner table with her brother and her parents, and they're talking about this bachelor that just came to town. They're talking about the daughter meeting him and possibly marrying him and all these weird things that people used to focus on back then. So it gave me major Pride and Prejudice vibes, which was cool. The main character, she is trying to escape the gentleman that she's supposed to be courting. Basically, he was giving her the ick. And so she's trying to escape him, and she crawls into this grandfather clock or something like that. She goes in there, and then she's kind of locked in, but she realizes behind her that she can go deeper and deeper into the clock. She comes out on the other end, and she's in this different world. She's trying to find her way, and there's like this evil king. Everyone's kind of warning her to stay away from him. Leave, you need to leave. And she doesn't listen. And the king ends up finding her, and he basically enslaves her to be his personal ballet dancer. She is forced to dance for him for so long that her feet are injured and bloody, and like at one point she's imprisoned and she's not allowed to have any food or water until she agrees to dance for him more. Not a good situation, but along the way she does make some friends and some allies. It was this beautiful, magical, very, very wintry, atmospheric story, and it was a love story as well, and it was really beautiful. I honestly don't know how this didn't make it on my top 10 books of the year. It probably should have. I'm always a little apprehensive to put my most recently read books on my best books of the year list, just because I'm like, is it on this list because it's the most fresh in my mind, or did I really love it that much? But I finished this a few weeks ago now, and I still love it. And the other book that I rated 4.5 stars is Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochran. This was the 3rd and final book that I read in my holiday romance reading vlog. I loved this one too. Again, this probably also should have got on my best book of the year list. Overall, it was a really good book. Good vibes, good atmosphere, very Christmassy, lots of different queer representation, which was really nice to see. And it was funny. If you didn't read this one this past Christmas, I highly suggest you put it on your holiday reads list for next year. And my one and only 5-star read for the month of December turned out to be my favorite book of the year, and that is Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This book honestly was just perfection. So much better than ACOTAR. The last 200 pages of this book, holy crap. Whew. I'm still in a bit of a reading slump because of that, I think. Best book of December, best book of the year, best book. Loved it. So those are all the books that I read in the month of December. If you want to leave a comment and you're not sure what to say, how about you tell me what your favorite and least favorite book of December was. As always, I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you so much for wrapping out the year with me. I started my channel at the end of October, so you guys have been with me for 2 full months now, and I cannot wait to see what the new year brings. And if you haven't subscribed yet and you've been thinking if you should, I say go for it. Hit that subscribe button. I'll be here waiting to say hi. Let's talk about books. Let's read. Let's be friends. So, all right. Thank you. You guys are amazing. I love you all. And until next time, bye.